Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Sorry, I'm laughing. Louis was joking with me beforehand. Oh gosh. Okay, just about what topic we're covering today. All right. We first of all, welcome to everybody who is new. To those of you who are back returning to a webinar again, welcome back. If you are new, I have a few notes for you all to go over. First of all, this is a webinar, so it's a little bit different than a Zoom meeting. If you have questions, you're going to type those into the Q&A box. Louis will speak for about an hour, and then he'll take questions for up to a half hour following the class. So we'll get through as many as we can. Just be aware this is a little bit different than some of our other webinars. If you need to leave before the Q&A section and you want to catch the Q&A, you can see it via the class recording tomorrow afternoon. That's usually available, and we'll be emailing it out. You're also always welcome to contact the store or email me. I'll send out information about that as well. So that's those. A quick note for anybody who's joining us who is not from the Northern Virginia area. We cater to Zone 7. That's where Merrifield Garden Center is located in Northern Virginia. So if you're from California, New York, Maine, Canada, we are so happy to have you. Just be aware that some of the plants will be a little bit different for you all in terms of what's native. I think that about covers it. Louis, I'm a little rusty since I've gotten back from maternity leave, so hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, but I'm getting back in the groove. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat so you all can send them my way. And Louis, I will let you go ahead and get started.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Sally.
Yeah.
My name is Louis Ratchford, and I work here at Merrifield at the Fair Oaks location. Work out in the trees and shrubs, and today we are going to be talking about native trees for fall interest. So let's just go ahead and get started. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, this is a sycamore, a sassafras, just to get everybody in the mood for our fall interest native trees. Isn't that beautiful? So a native plant, let's start with that. A native plant is considered native if it has been occurred natural in a particular region, ecosystem, or habitat without human introduction. It's from the National Wildlife Federation. So before there were humans here on Earth, these plants have been around, the ones you see today, for about 70 million years. And there was a huge woods that went from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Mississippi. After the Mississippi, we started getting into our grassland. Most of the trees, or all the trees that we're going to be talking with today, is going to be in that forest, that huge forest that we were talking about. And now that we've talked about the natives, one other thing to talk about is invasive plants. An invasive plant is a non-native to an ecosystem under consideration and whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. And that's from the U.S. Forest Service. So the reason I wrote this up here and the reason I talk about invasives is because they have to be non-native. If you look at plants that are native, some of them can be very, very aggressive. And in doing so, they basically are made that way for a purpose. Some purpose is to try to take over an area relatively quickly to save the soil, which is probably one of the most reasonable way. But anyway, when you have native plants, after a while, they automatically tame each other. So you don't really have to worry about them taking over a whole area like you do the invasive plants. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about some of the native trees for fall colors. I love trees. So this is one of my favorite seminars. So the first one is a serviceberry. Serviceberry, I've seen in the woods around here. They literally get flowers on them before they leaf out. They are considered an understory tree, And what I mean by that is if you have an overstory tree, they range anywhere from like 60 feet and up. The understory trees actually grow underneath them. And the serviceberry is a very good example of that. They are self-pollinating, which means they have male and female parts in their flower, and they can actually produce berries on them without having another tree around. They are very special to me because they actually berry first out of all the native trees that I know of. And that is usually in the late spring, early summer. They are edible to us. The birds just love them. Now, when you see these in the woods, you'll probably see them more muted, meaning that they probably don't have a lot of flowers on them, and that's because of the shade. If you take this plant and put it into full sun, it will actually do what I call a super bloom. You get thousands and thousands of flowers on it. They utilize all that extra energy from the sun, and it's a great opportunity for them to go ahead and blossom big time so that they can reproduce and get a lot of berries. So literally with a lot of native plants, especially in the forest, when a tree falls down, all of a sudden they're exposed to a lot of light. And in doing so, they utilize that light and be able to, grow faster and also flower better and berry better. The only thing that doesn't benefit from a tree falling down is a lot of our perennials. Perennials, when they're exposed to a lot of sun, a lot of them just burn up. For instance, the ferns and stuff. But all the trees and shrubs, really, they benefit from that. So here's a few pictures of it. These are the berries that are produced on the serviceberry. And as I mentioned to you, the birds just love them. And then this is the fall color. There's one that's called autumn brilliance, and you can understand why. They get to be a yellowish color with a lot of orange on them. The next one I want to talk about is called a sweet gum. Sweet gum is what's called a frontier tree. And what I mean by a frontier tree is after you get a lot of the shrubs starting to get a lot bigger, when you're going into a different stage of the progression up to an old growth forest, there's a lot of trees that come into these areas and actually grow relatively fast. They do produce a lot of seeds and they reproduce relatively quickly. The other thing about them is that they start to shade the area and they start to build up the soil to get the soil ready for all the hardwood trees. So these are the ones that come right beforehand. A lot of them are the pines. Pines are the frontier as well. And you also have a lot of the Virginia cedars that do the same sort of scenario. But some of the frontier trees that are deciduous, one of them is the sweet gum. There is a columnar form to this one that actually grows relatively straight up. They are known for their spiky cones. A lot of people don't like this tree because of them. The spiky cones are, in some views, an asset because they're very interesting. But a lot of people don't like them because they land on the ground and they're hard to get up and they're hard to clean up. But the neat thing about this tree is it has that wonderful progression of going from green into yellow, into orange, and into red. So it actually has different stages to its color. This is a good example of the spiky type of cones that you get onto a sweet gum. And this is a really good example of the flowers or the leaves during the fall. And this is what I mean. You look at these trees, each one of them is going through the progression of the leaves in a different time span. You got the green, and the green turns into the yellow. You look way back in the right, you get the orange. The one next to the green on the left is one that's emerging. And then at the very end, you get the one that's really a bright red. So this tree actually leaves out fall color for a long period of time. Another one is the red oak. The red oak literally is a overstory tree, and it is also considered a hardwood, which means that it actually grows relatively slowly. One thing about the oaks in general, they basically feed a lot of different animals with their acorns, and acorns are edible to us, by the way. Last year, we had not very many acorns, and a lot of the deer, which acorns is their main source of food, basically were very hungry. And they started to eat a lot of what we advertise as deer resistant plants. And the reason why is because the acorns weren't abundant last year. This year, we should have a pretty good growth of them. The reason why I took the red oak is because of the fall color on it. It's a very unique color. It's a brilliant red. They actually come out in the springtime like this, and they do have that reddish color on them. But as they grow, they turn to this incredible red in the fall. They also turn in even darker that into a very dark burgundy red. It's one of my favorite trees. That one and also the white oak. The thing about a lot of these native trees is that they're host to a lot of different types of caterpillars and a lot of host to a lot of different types of insects, and they're really dependent with the animals to make sure that they get fed well. So everyone knows about the American dogwood. The American dogwood is our Virginia state tree. It's called dogwood Florida, and it's an understory tree. And what I mean by understory is that it grows underneath a lot of the overstory trees. You get white blossoms on it. There is actually some that are red and some that are pink. They are known for their red berries, and the birds just love them. One thing about them is once they get ripe, the robins normally come in and they devour all of the berries. What I find interesting is some of those berries are overwrapped and they have a little tiny bit of alcohol in them. And I've actually seen some robins get drunk on these things and just sit on the floor, which I always thought was pretty funny. They are known for their fall color. Their fall color is more of a reddish type of thing. So one thing about the dogwoods is getting the super bloom. And what I mean by that is we moved over to Virginia back in the 1970s, and we had a septic field in our backyard. The first year around the septic field was woods, and they had tons and tons of different dogwoods back there, the native dogwoods. The first year, we might have gotten, maybe 20 or 30 flowers on each one of those dogwoods. We were all kind of disappointed. We thought they would really be brilliant. They had already set their buds for the previous year, so they literally weren't blooming very much. The following year, when you looked out into the backyard, it looked like a big, huge, basically a big, huge white cloud. There were thousands and thousands of dogwood flowers on them. So they basically, again, they can take full sun to full shade. They are somewhat hard to start in full shade, full sun, but you can do it, but you have to be very careful with that. One of the other things about it is the berries itself. The berries literally are red, and if you look to the side, you can basically see the little flower bud, and that flower bud will start to bloom the following year. They set their flowers really late in the season for the following year. So, and then the color of this plant is a red. They go into almost like a burgundy red. And you can tell with this one right here that it's shade because it's not very dense when it comes to the form of the plant. So this is one that was in shade. I like the idea of shade for a lot of these trees so that they're not dense, so you can see the structure of them. It just makes them look a little bit more interesting. So the yellow wood is another understory tree. The neat thing about the yellow wood is that it has these flowers on it that basically look like wisteria. They're beautiful. They also are very scented, so they literally they smell really good. One of the unique things about it is actually a lot of them are found in Kentucky, where there's a lot of limestone. This plant or this tree actually prefers a little bit more alkaline than some of the other natives, which, in our area, they tend to be a little bit more acidic. This is an understory tree as well, as I just mentioned, but it's a big one. It probably gets about 30 to 40 feet high. In full sun, you do get a lot of flowers on it. But what's weird about it is when you look at it, you'll think, oh, that's a lot of flowers on there. And then all of a sudden, every once in a while, they get a super bloom on them. They get 3 or 4 times as many flowers as they normally do. They can't really figure out why they do that, but they do that. The flowers come out a little later in the season when the leaves are actually on the tree. The other neat thing about it is the white bark. It's a very smooth bark, and basically it's on the white side. And then in the fall, it turns into a very, very intense yellow. And this is a good example of the flowers that come out in the late spring. And again, they remind me a lot of wisteria. This tree does get to be a more rounder form on it, especially when it's in full sun. When it is in shade, it's not going to bloom as much. It's going to be a little bit more leggy, but that's where it normally is found in nature. It's normally found in the wood, just like the serviceberry and just like the dogwoods. Most of these trees literally live in the woods and they have a more leggy, a more open type of form to them. When you do expose them to the sun, that's when you get the super blooms on them and you get the density of the tree. So, and literally they do turn into a brilliant, brilliant yellow in the fall. One of the other nice things about them too is that they literally make that perfectly rounded type of tree in full sun. So that's called the yellow wood. The black gum. So we have a black gum here on the property. It's probably 80, 90 years plus. Anytime I do show black gums to any customers or anything, I always mention that we have one on the property. It just sets a little bit more of a reality of what these real young, small trees are going to turn into over a period of time. They do get quite large, but it does take a long time to do so. They are a very typical hardwood tree. They grow very, very slowly. The neat thing about the black gum is its wood itself is almost like concrete. If you ever have to take one down, the people that take them down will probably charge you at least 2 or 3 times more than if it was another type of tree, because they'll go through a lot of chainsaw chains because this wood is so hard. The other neat thing about it too is that it literally, the bark on it turns black when it rains out, which adds to the interest, especially when it starts to get its fall color on it. There are male and female black gums. Both of them flower, but the females are the one that set berries. The berries are very, very small, and they actually feed a lot of the birds and a lot of the animals in our wildlife. The actual leaves themselves turn into a very intense orangey red color, and they tend to be one of the trees that starts to change color relatively early. The one that we have here on the property is already starting to change and getting its fall look to it. So this is what it looks like when it's. I always like to see the leaves when there's a blue sky. It just makes them just a lot more intense, especially in the full sun. And this is looking up at one. One thing I love about black gums is the corky bark that they get on them. They are a beautiful tree. You can tell with the one that we have here, it basically grew in the woods for a while, and then you can tell that the woods was taken away because its canopy opens up really early. If you go into a woods and you see a lot of these hardwoods, you see these totem poles or these columns that go straight up, and then 50, 60, 70 feet up is all of a sudden that's where you get your canopy. If you take these hardwood trees and you put them in an open area, they basically get that canopy really, really close to the ground. So a beautiful tree. And this is what it looks like when it's just starting to change. So the white pine, the reason why I put white pine in here is when you take an evergreen like white pine and you put it amongst a lot of the deciduous native trees, the white pine, which is a bluish color, actually emphasizes the color of the leaves that are actually changing. You literally can see them and they're a lot more intense. The white pines are an overstory tree. They grow relatively fast. I have seen them in the wild. They can get at least 100 feet high, and a lot more than 100 feet, by the way. When the English came over here, they took down a lot of the white pines because they were actually used for their ships for the mainsail. White pines grow extremely straight, and there's usually just one trunk on them, and they go way, way up into the sky. But it is really a nice type of tree to use if you're thinking about your landscape for the fall, is to make sure that you put in a lot of these evergreens because they basically do bring out the more intense color of the fall color trees by having the bluish tree around it, and also the contrast with the needles as well. This is a weeping form of the white pine. We have a couple of those here on the property. They're very, very nice as a specimen plant. And that yellow on them is actually their fall look because they're shedding. You have to keep in mind that a lot of these evergreens do shed from the core of the plant. They shed needles. It's just a very common process that they do. And this is what the white pines look like amongst a lot of the fall color. You can see that they really do, especially when you have the darker green above, they really do bring out the intensity of the deciduous color, colorful fall color look. Okay, so the sourwood. The sourwood is by far one of my favorite trees, and I keep saying that over and over again. I realize that. I do love these trees. The sourwood comes out with these leathery type looking leaves on them. And then at the very end of each one of those branches, you get a cluster of flowers. The flowers line up on each one of the stems, and they are incredible for bees. They're probably one of the best bee attractive type plants that we have. They smell incredibly good. They smell like late spring. And they also produce a lot of honey for the bees. If you ever go into the grocery store, you might see the sourwood honey in there. They really do are important to the pollinators. The other neat thing about them is that they tolerate some moisture. So that actually works very well if you have a moist area. Their leaves are incredibly shiny, and they do turn into red in the fall. The neat thing about it is that the actual flowers themselves produce these really interesting seed pods that sit on the ends of each one of these branches, and they're white. So they have all sorts of different nicknames for it. One of them is skeleton fingers for Halloween, I guess. But this is the way that the plant looks after it gets rid of its flowers and it has all the berries on it. It also gets that very, very intense red on it as well. And again, this plant can go into shade. It's not going to bloom as much, but that's its natural form. You usually see these at the lower end of a valley where there's a lot more moisture. You wouldn't see them very high up in the mountains. You see them pretty much in the valleys. And this is a close-up of them when they come with their seed pods. It really does make for a really beautiful look in the fall. And then we have our sugar maples. Sugar maples are known for their intensity of their fall color. It is probably what I consider as one of the best. If you ever go up to New England this time of the year, they got massive sugar maples up there that give you just incredible color. And a lot of those maples up there literally are grown not in the woods, but actually in open areas. So they have the perfect round form on them. And their actual leaves evolve going from a yellow into more of an orangey color. And we have to remember also is that they do get maple syrup from these guys as well. Just a beautiful tree. And this is what they look like when you're looking up into the tree. And this is the sugar maple leaves themselves. You can tell it's a maple just from the shape of the leaf. But you also get this. And this is what I talk about when you see all those really old towns up in New England. You see these massive sugar maples in all their glory. That's what they're known for. There's a beautiful tree in the fall. And then we have the elm trees. So the elms actually got a disease called the Dutch elm disease. And we had elm trees lining most of the city streets in all of our major cities in the east. The reason why is they were a perfect type of structure to use along a city street. And the reason why they actually go up into a very narrow type of form, almost a V-shaped form, and then the actual branches kind of slide back down again. When you walk down the streets, it would look like you'd be in a cathedral. And unfortunately, the Dutch elm disease wiped out most of them. They did find one of them over near the Jefferson Memorial here in Washington, and there was another one over in Princeton University. And both of those actually are resistant to the Dutch elm disease. So they've taken the Jefferson elm and also the Princeton elm and they mass produced it. So, which is really nice that they're able to do that. So we do have a bunch of elm trees again. They are natives. They are from the native batch. It's very unfortunate that it happened. They say that with the American chestnut, that if the American chestnut, which is a tree that literally got another disease and totally wiped them out totally, they're trying to develop them over at the National Arboretum up near, I think it's Brandy Farm, to try to get some that actually are resistant to the fungus that's in the soil. They say that if that disease would have hit at the height of their population, meaning when you have that really big forest that went from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi, there were millions and millions of trees and millions of the American chestnut. And they basically said that, that there was probably be some of those elk or some of those American chestnuts that actually would have survived the blight. But unfortunately, because of the number that they had when it hit, it was very, very small compared to what it was in history, that they were all wiped out. You can still see them out in nature. The actual disease itself actually hits them when they're still a juvenile, so they never actually can reproduce. This tree is known for its yellow. Picture the streets of Washington having these towering trees lining each one of the boulevards in the fall with these massive trees that produce these beautiful yellow yellow leaves on them. This is what the leaves look like. So another one that I've decided to put in here is the persimmon. We do have a native persimmon. It is our native fruit tree. Um, they basically are male and they're female. And I was talking to a colleague of mine, and they said that a male can be 1/4 of a mile away, and it can still literally pollinate the females to give fruit. Um, the wild persimmon is a source of a lot of food for a lot of different types of animals. And it's a double whammy. You get the fruit for the animals, and then you actually get the actual flowers for the pollinators, for the bees. So it's a double whammy type of situation. This tree gives you these nice orange type persimmons on them. They are stringent, meaning that before they're ripe, if you bite into one, then the actual persimmon will take out all of the moisture in your mouth. It's very strange. So with this one, make sure that they are very, very ripe. A lot of people think that you should never pick one of these off the actual tree, but let it fall to the ground before eating it. They do go from a brilliant orange into a tan type of situation. And they are considered an understory tree. They get about 20 to 30 feet high, but they are beautiful. This is one that's already lost all of its leaves. This is perfect for the fall because of the orange on them. And then also they get some real nice leaf on them as well. And you can see the leaves with the actual persimmons on them. They do give a lot, as I've said before, they do give a lot of food for a lot of different animals out there. And they're actually very good for us as well. So this is another example of them. So let's talk about the redbuds. Redbuds are an understory tree. They normally grow in the woods. They grow just about the same, they flower at just about the same time as the native dogwoods. I always find them to be very complementary. Having the white big flowers of the dogwood with the small purple flowers that line the branches of the redbud, they basically, seriously, they complement each other very nicely. Both the redbud and the dogwoods literally bloom without any leaves on them. So they start to bloom when the leaves up on the overstory trees are just sort of like coming out, and they're sort of limey color. And by the end of their flowering, all the leaves are on the trees by then. The other neat thing about them is they, as I said, they're natives. There's a lot of different varieties that we carry that actually come out in the spring with all sorts of different types of leaves on them. So after they flower, you get one that's called a rising sun. The new growth on that, the leaves are orange. And then as that leaf matures, it goes from orange into yellow, into lime green, and into green. We also have one that's called flamethrower. Flamethrower comes out with the purple flowers on it, but afterwards, the new growth, it goes from red into orange. And then as that leaf ages, it goes from orange into yellow, and then again into lime green, and then eventually into green. So the redbuds have more than just a flower interest. They got new leaf interest as well. The other thing about it too is all of them by the mid, August, they literally have all sorts of green on them, and then they all turn into yellow in the fall. One of the other things about them is they get this very interesting seed pod on them that I'll give you a look at. This is a perfect example of the rising sun. The rising sun, as I mentioned, comes out with these orange leaves on them. And then as those leaf ages, they turn into all those supplementary colors such as yellow and lime green. It's a really neat showpiece. I think this plant, overall, most red buds can take full sun to full shade. Some of these guys here prefer a little bit of protection from the afternoon sun. And this is how their seed pods are. They look like string beans, how they are in the fall. And then all of a sudden, they turn into this brilliant yellowy orange color. That's one plant out there right now at the nursery that actually is doing very well with its fall color. I mean, that whole bed is full of color right now. They do come in a weeping form as well, which is really pretty. This is what it looks like in the landscape. And so another one I couldn't help myself is the Virginia red cedar, which I don't understand it, but it is actually a juniper. It is not a cedar. This is a frontier tree as well. This is actually exists right before you get into the hardwoods. Once this thing goes into shade, it's going to die. But its purpose is to get that soil ready for those hardwoods. The other thing about it, which I love, is that it has these blue berries, and the actual blue berries are really not berries at all. They're actually little tiny cones. But this is another one of those trees that actually bring out a lot of the fall color within the landscape. When you see these trees and you see a lot of the shrubs and a lot of the understory trees around them in that natural landscape, when when the ground is just developing to get to those hardwood forests, it is amazing. There is a sumac that actually has very intense color, and having that with the juniper is amazing in the fall. So this is what the berries look like here. And I put this in there. It's in a graveyard. And this is a one that actually is one of the oldest Virginia cedars in the country. I came across it and I just thought it was very interesting. A lot of these very, very old plants that you see are in graveyards, which I always find amazing. One other thing about the Virginia cedars is that they come out with all sorts of different new cultivars. There's one of them that's called Brody, and Brody tends to have a little bit more of a limey look to it. There's also one that's called Taylor, which looks almost like an Italian cypress. It literally goes straight up. So there's a lot of new different varieties out there of the Virginia cedars that you can use. A lot of people use them also for borders between them and their neighbors. They make a very nice privacy type adventure. But if you do something like that, instead of lining them up like soldiers, take some of those understory trees and mix in there, and it makes a really nice looking landscape. So when you look at it, you go, that's a beautiful landscape. Oh, and by the way, it also is giving me some privacy. When you take plants and you just put them one right after the other, it basically looks like it's like a privacy hedge. Now, I have a colleague of mine, Allison, who told me that the pawpaw, which is a fruit-bearing tree, has literally the largest fruit of any native tree in North America, which I was just totally surprised about. It is an amazing tree. One thing about it are the flowers on it. The flowers come out and they literally hang right off of the stems. And they literally are that really dark burgundy type looking thing. The flowers themselves can be either male or female, or what we call a perfect flower. And a perfect flower means that it has the male and the female parts in one flower. It is a host to the zebra swallowtail butterfly. I mean, a lot of these native trees are, host to a lot of the different insects and a lot of the different butterflies out there. Remember, they've had these relationships going on for 70 million years. The other neat thing about it is the fruit itself. It's unbelievable. They do taste, in my opinion, they taste a little bit like figs. If you ever get a chance to eat one, definitely do so. I don't understand why they don't like, have tons of these everywhere. Like in the supermarkets and stuff. It just doesn't add up for me that we have this beautiful, native tree with this really good fruit on it. And it's not, it's not commercial. We don't have it in our stores and everything. Um, it is an understory tree, so it literally grows underneath the canopy. When you put this thing into full sun, it literally can get a lot of different flowers on it for that super bloom. But the other neat characteristic is that the actual leaves themselves can get really, really big, almost mimicking the actually big leaf magnolia. I mean, I was over at someplace over in Wheaton. They have a Brookside Gardens, and they had a pawpaw, which I didn't know was a pawpaw because the leaves were too big. And I went over to it and I was looking at it, and finally I cheated, got out my app, took a picture of it, and then I got little hairs on my back standing up, and I couldn't believe that this was a pawpaw with these huge leaves on it. But it's a very, very interesting looking type of tree, and it should be used a lot more. It's a beautiful, beautiful yellow in the fall. It's one of my favorite trees, and it's really, really good to eat. So the river birch. The river birch is considered a native tree. It also is considered an understory tree. It can get about 40 feet high. It does like moisture, hence the name as the river birch. It grows relatively fast. Those flowers that you see are the real flowers of it. They hang down. They basically, what's known for this tree is the peeling bark on it. The bark is amazing. A lot of people, they put lights underneath it during the wintertime because it makes the light actually goes up into the tree, and it makes a very neat looking texture. One thing about this is we live in the furthest south that this thing can grow. If you go further south than here, you really don't see a lot of river birds. They like a little bit more on the cooler side. When the fall comes around, even before that, if we're having some kind of drought or it's been very dry, go out there and do some supplementary watering on this. And what I mean by that is go out there and just water it, and water it very deep. These trees can get a little crispy in August if it's very, very dry. If you add a little bit of moisture into that soil, then in the fall, you get this incredible yellow leaf on it. And it actually stands out really nicely because the form of this tree is very open, meaning that you can actually plant grass underneath it. So that it's not a very, very dense tree. But it's a very neat bark on there. It's very appealing. And this is the fall color on it. Beautiful tree. The juvenile tree does not get the bark peeling yet. And you'll notice when you go out to the area out here, you'll see a little tiny bit at the bottom of the trunk that's starting to mature and is starting to peel. But most of the other parts is a smooth type of bark on it. The hickory. The hickories are an overstory tree. They do have the male and the female flowers on the same tree, which is nice because it's somewhat self-pollinating. And then in the fall, you get this brilliant yellow flowers. They're kind of like an orangey yellow. The fruit of this thing, the nut on this thing is quite large. So you got to be really careful with these things. I had some of these in my yard when I was growing up, and we used to crack them open and eat them. They're really actually pretty good. And this is what they look like on the tree before they're mature. And then this is the fall color on it. It does have that really nice yellow looking type leaf with a little tiny bit of orange. Um, and one other thing, though, is a sidestep to all this is leaves falling to the ground. One thing I want to mention to you is a lot of these leaves that fall to the ground, if possible, it's better to leave them on the ground and go through that natural type of cycle that has been going on for a long period of time. What happens is these leaves hit the ground, and there's billions and billions of different types of little insects, anywhere from funguses, bacterias, all sorts of different stuff in the soil that literally starts to break down these leaves. And they feed the worms, they feed all sorts of stuff. They enhance the soil, they make the soil a lot more healthier. It's very important that this cycle comes on. And there's a lot of different types of bees that actually hibernate in these leaves during the winter time. And then when they springtime, they wake up and they go and they start a nest. So that's another important thing about them. But also, when you take the leaves and you let them on the ground, literally when they first hit, you get this mosaic of a lot of beautiful colored leaves on the ground. It's very hard with grass with leaves. A lot of people try to, mow them to try to break them down into the soil to build the soil within the grass. That is definitely one thing to do. I always find it very interesting that people rake up their leaves, they take it down to the curb. Fairfax County comes by, they clean them all up. They go and they take them to the dump and they have them there. And then all the people go back there and they get the leaves and they use them for all sorts of stuff for their gardening. Leaves are extremely valuable. One other thing I can consider too is if you live on the edge of a woods and you have the habit of taking your leaves and just raking them into the woods. That can play havoc on a lot of the trees in there. And the reason why I say that is those trees have literally a root collar on them. And if those leaves start to build up and they go over the root collar, then they basically will start to deprede the actual tree itself, because that bark will start to rot away and the tree will eventually die. So if you do need to take your leaves and put them into the woods, make sure you really spread them out so that they literally don't have a very, very deep type of leaves next to these trees. So this is the close-up of the hickory leaf. And the other one, and this is one of my favorites, by the way, is the red maple. Red maple is a frontier tree. It's right on the edge of being a hardwood, but it's not quite there. First of all, they grow relatively quickly. Secondly, they get some of the best fall color of any of our native trees. They do get helicopters on them. There is one variety that does not get the helicopters. The thing about the red maples is those helicopters, they land on the ground and you get thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of red maples, little babies. They are not invasive. A lot of people come in and said, oh my gosh, the red maples are invasive. They come up everywhere. The red maples are designed to do that. And what I mean by that, remember, they're actually getting the soil ready for the hardwoods. They, first of all, want to send out as many seeds out there so they can start growing trees. And what those trees will do is they will shade underneath them. And in doing so, they get everything ready for the hardwoods. Secondly, they're saving soil. Where these frontier trees end up is where you have a lot of undergrowth and you have no overgrowth. So literally they start to shade, they start to get their root system in there, they're saving soil, their leaves are building up the soil, and they're getting the soil ready for all of your hardwoods. So this is a very, very important tree. And thank God that they have all these helicopters that go everywhere, because these trees literally are vital to saving the soil and helping out to get to the hardwoods. So, And so, I work out here at Maryfield at the Barrows location in the back, and we have a ton of maples on the west side. And sometimes during the year, when there's helicopters are ready to start flying, literally the wind will come through and you will get thousands and thousands and thousands of helicopters just flying all over the place. And it is probably one of the most beautiful things, especially in the when it's sunny outside. They look like little insects. And their fall color, they literally can merge from going into yellow, into orange, and eventually into red. And the red is a very nice cherry red. Like there's one that's called Red October, there's one that's called Red Point, and there's one that's called the Sunset. Sunset is one that gets that red, but it kind of evolves and it goes from yellows into the oranges, into the reds. It was a beautiful tree. And if you have it in full sun, it does make that perfect looking type of tree, that big rounded look of tree that you like. One thing about maples and other things, when you do put them in your lawn, when you first plant them, make sure you water deep, because then what will happen is that those roots literally will follow that water down. The surface dries first, the roots will go down into the ground more, and you'll have less of those surface roots in your lawn. It's really important when you first plant these trees to make sure you you water very, very deeply. And a lot of people like the flowers on them in the springtime. It's almost like a mini fall when you look up there, like a muted one. And this is what they look like in the fall. This is probably the sunset. It's going from orange and eventually get to red. And this is your typical red. If you look underneath there, you have all those red leaves. It almost looks like a reflection, like it was sitting on water. A beautiful plant. Here's another picture of them in the sun. The sassafras is an awesome tree. It can get the first one that I showed you, the first slide. This thing can have orange, it can have yellow, it can have green, it can have red. The other neat thing about it is its leaves are different. You have like 4 different types of leaves on it. You have like the 3-lobe, which looks like a mitt to a certain degree. You have the 2-lobe. You have a mitt where there's like a real big one type of lobe on it, and then a small one on the side, and then you have the entire leaf. So you have all sorts of different types of leaf forms on this. It does have male and female flowers, or male or female trees. Also, it has scented type of leaves on it, and the roots of this thing smell like root beer, and that's where they got the flavor of root beer on it. And this is an understory tree, and it probably, in my opinion, is probably one of the best, if not the best, fall color of any tree out there. This is the flowers on it. These are the berries that happen in the fall. And this is the actual tree itself. And this is what I'm talking about. It's an amazing looking type of tree. The way that it evolves with its fall color is just beautiful. The poplar is a fast growing hardwood, if you will. They grow very quickly. I remember we had a tree fall down at the beginning when I moved into an area over in Herndon, back when I was a kid. And after that tree fell down, the poplars came and they grew relatively quickly, and we would climb them and they would bend over and we would almost touch the ground and we could get off and we would go 15, 20 feet in the air. I love poplars. So they're a fast growing tree. They literally get to be about 100 feet high. They're beautiful when they're out. They can give that beautiful, rounded form on them. If they're not in the woods, if they're in their woods, then they have that one trunk that goes way, 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 way up. And then at the very top, you have all your branching. It is a relative of the magnolia, and it turns into an extremely yellow leaf in the fall. These are the flowers on them. They do resemble a little bit of the magnolia. If you look very closely up in the spring after they leaf out, you'll be able to see some of these flowers on them. They're quite amazing. I've seen them in the ground when I go hiking. And then this is what it looks like when they're in yellow. And I love it again with that blue background. These are the highest trees out there right now when it comes to the hardwood forest. The poplars are the ones that took the place of the American chestnuts. This is what they look like. The sycamore is the widest of trees, of any tree on the east. What I mean by that, their girth is huge. When I was hiking one time near the Potomac, and we found a hollowed out one, and we hung out in it. It was really kind of neat. But they literally are the biggest tree when it comes to the girth of their trunk. They do have really nice looking, like army fatigue looking type of bark on them that peels. They grow relatively quickly. You see them around a lot of the moisture areas. You can see them along the Potomac River. There's some huge ones down there. The other neat thing about them is they get these seed pods on them. So this is what I mean by the army fatigue. Beautiful. During the wintertime, when you look out into the forest, you see these real white bark trees that are pretty big. These are the sycamores. And this is what they look like in the fall. They give you that rusty orange color or rusty yellow color. And this is the girth of one. I have a theory, I can't prove it, but if their trunk is in shade, they literally don't peel as much and they don't have that whiter type look. But if they're in full sun, they do get that. I noticed that when I'm out hiking in the woods. I don't know if it's true or not, though. And the last tree that we're going to talk about, I did say the best for last, is the American beech. The American beech is an overstory tree. It literally has this whitewash type bark on it. If you ever go hiking, you will notice there's one tree that always has people's initial in it, which drives me nuts. I can't stand it, but it happens, is that they always put their initials on these type of trees. Never do that to a tree. But they have this white bark on it, like washed bark on it. They have incredible root flares on it, and I'll show you a picture of that. And their bark is literally, or their leaves are literally a brilliant yellow in the fall. And then actually that yellow turns into brown, and those leaves sit there all the way through the wintertime. This tree is the patient of all trees, meaning that it has more patience than any other tree. The reason why I say that is it can be in very dense shade. It will grow very, very slowly. It will slowly grow. Then all of a sudden, the canopy opens up because the tree fell. And then all of a sudden, it grew a little quicker. And then it's closed it back up again. It's still growing and growing. And eventually, it gets to be the overstory. I did have one of these in my yard when I was growing up. And it was a tree that actually went up. And then it went parallel over. And it went back up again. And you could actually ride it. We called it the horse tree, which is probably why I find it to be one of my favorite trees. This is the American beech. This is the leaves on it. Oh, and this is the beech nut that they produce. And this is what they look like in the fall. And these are what I call the root flares on them. They have some of the best root flares of any of the overstory trees that I know of. There's just a beautiful, beautiful way about this tree. And then these are the leaves in the fall and the winter. They do hold on. And then basically in the springtime is when they fall off. We were trying to figure out what the benefits would be of holding on to leaf until the fall. And then this is the way that it looks when it's has snow on it. It's a beautiful photograph. So, and that's the end. Does anyone have any questions or anything? Let's go to
Yes, and for
Sunday.
anyone who needs to leave, just a note, now is 1 o'clock. So if you need to leave, just know we're recording and you're always welcome to follow up if you have questions. So Louis, I will jump in with our questions now. Um,
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly, I'm trying we had a question about planting if Merrifield were to come out and plant. I'm working on it. I just got an answer from Danny, who's sometimes behind the camera. So I'm working on getting that transcribed for you all so I can actually send it out into the chat.
I mean, I can go over that.
Oh, you know all the okay, you know all
Yeah.
the costs and
I
the fees and
mean,
stuff?
literally, right now is probably one of the best times to plant trees. The
Yeah, it
reason
is.
why the root system literally is going to be growing roots all the way through the winter, into the spring, all the way until next summer. It's extremely easy to get a tree through the winter time. It's not so easy to get it through the summer. So by planting it now, when you do hit the summer, it will literally give you twice as much roots than if you planted in the springtime. So when Maryfield comes out to plant, basically, first of all, it we call Miss Utility before we come out to mark the area. We usually try to give you some flags to put down so that Miss Utility doesn't, mark the whole yard, but just where the flag is. Secondly, we deliver the plant to the property. We get it to the place to be planted. We dig a hole. We amend the soil. We fertilize it. We plant it correctly. And then when we're done, we put mulch around it. You get to decide what kind of mulch we use. We want to make sure that we match that mulch up with the mulch that you have in all your other beds. One thing about it, it's normally 70% of the cost of the plant, but there is a minimum fee according to your zip code. So when you come in, we'll ask you what your zip code is, and we'll tell you what the minimum fee is. And what that means is that the 70% falls below the minimum fee, then you would pay the minimum fee. If it's above the minimum fee, then that's how much you would pay. And we usually go at least a week out with that. We guarantee next day delivery. If you ever want anything delivered and you're in a rush, we can always deliver it the following day. But because of Miss Utility, we usually go at least a week out on our planting.
Thank you, Louis. I get those questions periodically, and I can never know all those details, so thank you. Okay, here we go. I'm looking for a tree that will not grow too much higher than the top of the roof, like 30 feet or so, that will provide shade for the front of our house. It needs to tolerate full sun and poor soil. And for context, this person had a sugar maple that got killed by a sapsucker bird. So no, I guess not a sugar maple. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I think probably for me, mine would be a yellowwood.
Okay.
Yellowwood is a perfect tree for a situation like that. The neat thing about it is it doesn't get too big. It's still an understory, but it's on the larger part of the understory. The other neat thing about it is it gives you those super blooms every couple of years. They use this tree all the time to line streets. So it actually is a very clean tree. And it does give you that for interest type of season. It gives you the leaves with the buds, it gives you flowers, it gives you scent, it gives you those really nice yellow leaves in the fall. And then in the wintertime, it gives you that nice whitewashed type of bark on it. One thing you could do is bring me some photographs. I work every day here, but I really wouldn't call it work though. I do. I'm here every day except for Saturdays. It's always a good idea to bring some photographs in and then actually look and see what kind of sun you have. Maybe do some measurements, and we can go down into the tree area and we can go and discuss all the different types of trees out there, all the native ones. And we can go ahead and educate you on what kind of tree would be best for that area.
Perfect. All right. Next question. Do the native persimmons have any special cultural requirements?
Any what?
Culture requirements. Like, do they need any particular type of soil, water, anything like that?
I do not believe so. I mean, they grow, I mean, literally a lot of these native trees, they literally grow in our soil. They literally don't need to be fertilized, even though I believe they do need to be fertilized. Um, I just think that trees are hungry, so they need to be fertilized. But no, there's no special requirements when it comes to that. Remember, the fruit will fall from the ground. They're not considered a clean tree. They are a fruit tree. Use the fruit. I mean, I have a fig in my yard, and we rarely get any figs on the ground. And literally, it's because they are eaten. Um, with the American persimmon, you basically, when they hit the ground, they are ripe and they are ready to eat. So, yeah, but they're a wonderful plant. I don't think there's anything that you really need to do with those.
Okay. Okay, great. Next question. Scrolling back. Oh, okay. Apparently there's a bunch of pawpaws at Great Falls Park. I didn't know that. That's just a comment. That's interesting. My understanding is the shelf life isn't much, which is why they're not in the grocery stores. I think I've heard that from David Yost, which is a shame. Does Merrifield sell pawpaw trees? What's the eventual height and required spacing?
Okay, so with pawpaws in general, you can actually plant those 3 feet apart if you wanted to. I've seen groves in the woods, healthy groves in the woods, by the way, and they literally are very, very close together. So there's really no distance between them. When the plants are planted by birds, they literally don't walk and kind of measure out where to put them. They just literally come up, and they actually can be extremely close to each other. I think it's best to plant them in a little bit more sun. And the reason why, they literally will get more flowers on them and more berries. One thing about them, you do have to be a little bit patient with them. Their actual tree itself has to be a certain age before it will start to reproduce. And they literally grow in our area. They can take moisture though. So if you have an area that literally has some moisture in it, or supplement the water when it is dry, when we go through a drought. So when you think about the hardwood forest and you think about the old growth forest, pawpaws lived in the bottom of the forest. They're an understory tree. That soil used to be literally some of the best soil. You think about it, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, those leaves were falling. And those insects and those, tiny bacteria and funguses and mushrooms and everything is just breaking down the soil year after year after year. And it was like a sponge. And what I mean by that is it could hold water for a long period of time, but it was airy, meaning there was moisture, but there was a lot of air in there as well. A lot of these trees, that's what they prefer. That's what they grew up with. We don't have that soil anymore. By leaving the roots and leaving the leaves in the ground or on the ground to break down, we can try to get that soil back, but we can't. So by supplementing the water during a drought type of season, you can basically mimic that to a certain degree. And when you do water, make sure you water very, very slowly so that the water penetrates really far down into the ground. It kind of mimics that, that misty, constant rain that's not pouring, and the water literally goes down into the ground. So, yeah, they're relatively easy to grow once they're established. And
Okay.
I don't think there is a distance to them. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
I've seen groves of them where they're really, really close together. And
Okay.
remember, with any type of tree, they do communicate with each other. So if you do have a grove of pawpaws, it's actually better for the mass of them because they will communicate and tell each other about any problems they're having with insects, with funguses and stuff, so that they can be healthy altogether.
Yeah, I read that book you recommended to me a few years ago from the what was the forest manager in Germany, I think. Fascinating. It's called Secret Life of Trees, I think. Hidden Life of Trees. It was awesome. Okay. If Louis doesn't, yeah, that's fine, everybody. If you need to go, I'm getting some notes. You're off, you're welcome to go. We'll send you the recording so you can catch up later if you want. And then always feel free to email me questions. Just type your email into the chat and I can follow up with you. If Louis doesn't mention, which you didn't, can you ask him to comment on the Carolina silver bell tree, which despite the name, I understand is also native to Virginia? Looks interesting, but I read it's sometimes hard to find.
Okay, can you repeat that, please?
Is the Carolina silver bell, is that a native tree in Virginia? And do we have it or is it hard to find?
Okay, so I believe that the Carolina silver bell is a native,
Okay.
and we did have some down there, but I don't know if we have them anymore.
Okay.
You can call. I'll be outside probably within, half an hour, but you can call and I will go down there and check for you, and I will have that information for you.
Okay. Um, all righty, perfect. Next question. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get through as many of these as we can. You mentioned flamethrower and another redbud species. How does the forest pansy redbud do in Northern Virginia?
Okay, so the forest pansy redbud, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so forest pansy redbud is a native redbud. It's a cultivar.
Okay.
And basically, what that tree does is the tips of it are very dark red and they hold red through most of the spring. By summer, it starts to fade into green. And then in the fall, it turns into a brilliant yellow. So it is an understory tree. It gets about 15 to 20 feet high, probably about maybe 10 feet wide. So it does good in full sun. It goes good in shade. In shade, it is going to be a little bit more, leggy and a little less canopy. In full sun, it basically is going to be a lot more dense.
Okay. Next, what is the height of the okay. What is the height of the American dogwood and the redbud?
Okay, so they range probably about maybe 20 feet high for both of those.
Okay, 20 feet.
Now there is a type of new redbud. There's one that's called Marnet or something like that. It's a more of a dwarf variety. So
Monet, is it Monet like the artist?
yeah.
Monet. Okay.
So when you look at a dwarf plant versus a regular plant, so the dwarf plant, it just grows slower. It doesn't stay smaller. It just grows slower. So when you're looking at, these heights of these plants, they don't get to 15 feet and then stop. They don't get to 20 feet and then stop. They literally continue to grow. It's more of a growing pattern than it is literally a destination. So a dwarf plant, when we do have a new type of redbud out there that is a native and it is a dwarf. And what it is, and I forget the name of it, and what it is literally, it will literally get to be as big as all the rest of them, but it's going to take a lot longer to do so.
Okay.
And the other thing to consider too, if you are looking for trees that are a little bit smaller, you can literally trim these trees. We do have classes here on how to trim. There's a guy, Professor Larry, who loves to give a class on trimming trees and stuff like that. He would be more than happy. He sits at the help desk on Sunday, and coming in to pick his brain is always a good idea. I mean, the guy's amazing. But anyway, I mean, if you're looking for a smaller tree, you can trim some of these trees afterwards. Keep in mind too that we sell trees that are very young. So it's going to be a while before that tree reaches up to that canopy that is advertised as.
Okay. All right, let's see here. Next question. Is there an easy way to distinguish sugar maples from red maples? I have both on my property, but I don't know how to identify them.
Okay, so in most cases, I find it difficult as well, by the way. I would have to do research on that to find out, I work here at the nursery and they're labeled, as to what is a red bud or what is a red maple and what is a sugar maple. There are probably some characteristics of those that are not common with both of them. I would have to do research to find out what that would be. I know in our area, I have rarely found any sugar maples. Our woods are full of the red maples, but I do not know the difference between the two of them. We do have some people at the help desk, and we do have an arborist here, Michael, who would be able to tell you that, but I just don't know.
Okay, okay. You just reminded me of when we ordered saplings for like 8 years ago for Arbor Day, and we had ordered dogwoods, and Paul, he's one of our colleagues, walks in, and these are sticks, like just sticks, and no leaves, nothing. He walks in and goes, "Nice elm trees, nice elm saplings." And we're like, "These are dogwoods, Paul," and he's like, "No, it's not." They could tell from a stick. I mean, it's pretty amazing. All
Yeah,
right.
amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's wild just from a stick with no leaves on it. Okay. Sassafras. Is it moisture tolerant? Does it prefer full sun, full shade, or mixed light?
What tree?
A sassafras.
Sassafras? Sassafras can take full sun to full shade.
Okay.
I've seen them in
Same thing.
both. Um,
How tall does it grow?
they don't really grow that fast. I
Okay.
would imagine they probably get about at least 20 over time.
Okay.
The good news is that we have them here at the nursery right now. It is rare for us to have them.
Okay.
So we have like three of them left. Um, but I'm a big root beer fan. I love root beer. And you literally can smell the root beer on them. So yeah,
Okay.
there's a
That's
wonderful,
so cool. I always forget about that.
yeah.
I remember you telling me that. Um, oh, okay. When you recommended that you should water deeply when planting a red maple to enable the roots to grow deeply, was that only for the red maple or for all newly planted trees? Important question.
Okay, so it's with all trees. So think so first of all, when you plant a tree, that root ball is the extent of its root system.
Hmm.
So that literally when you water, if you water very shallowly, that root system is going to develop on the surface because that water is not penetrating all the way down to the bottom of the root ball. If you plant and you water slowly, you're basically filling up that hole with water. And then over time, that water drains out, meaning that the driest part of that is going to be at the surface and the
Okay.
water is going to be underneath that. When the root system is developing, it literally is going to go down further into the ground to get that water. Because again, the water at the top is literally drying first. So that's why I always recommend with any tree that you plant that when you water, water very deeply. And keep in mind as well that those root systems need air just as much as they need that water. So let it dry to a certain degree before you water it again. But anytime you do water it very deeply. And on a side note, we used to have winters that were moist, meaning that the soil was always moist. If we had a big snowstorm or something, then you could count on that soil being moist for most of the winter. Lately, we've been having droughts in the wintertime. It's very strange. And that's devastating for plants, especially new plants and especially evergreens. Remember, evergreens are drinking up water all the way through the winter to keep themselves green. And that root system of that evergreen that you just planted is very limited. If for some reason you're planting evergreens or just planting a tree that's deciduous, through the wintertime, if it does get dry, make sure that you go out there and water it. And again, when you water it very slowly. That water stands for two different things. The first thing is when it gets very, very cold, the surface of the earth, because it's moist, will freeze. underneath the earth is very, very warm. It's like, 40s down there. And it literally rises up, heat rises. It gets to the top, it can't get out because of the ice that forms on the top. So that's one way to keep those roots nice and warm. And those roots are actually forming and growing. So it needs that. The second thing is that those plants are growing roots. They need the moisture to grow successful roots all the way through the wintertime.
Okay. Um, okay, so we have, okay, 10 minutes. Let's see. All right, next question. Is there is there a Louis counterpart at the Merrifield location in Merrifield Garden Center? No one's quite like Louis. We have highly knowledgeable people at all three of our stores. I'll confess, I know mostly Gainesville store and the Fair Oaks store because that's where most of our classes are. I know David Yost has just told me about a guy named Jack Dunlap at the Fair Oaks at the Merrifield location. Louis, do you know of any guys from Trees and Shrubs over there? Names? I don't want to get in trouble for missing names,
Oh,
but
so names of the people here at the Fair Oaks location?
probably Fair Oaks, Merrifield. So I know if you're interested in trees and shrubs and you go to the Gainesville store, I know like Andy Johnson, he can recommend other people out there. What's the Kristen, if she's Kristen, and then at our store we have you,
Yeah,
Allison.
so we have, I mean, first of all, what I always find amazing is that we have people here in all three locations that actually know a lot about plants. There's not, some of us are a little bit more, some of us a little bit less, but we know a lot about plants.
Yeah, then I'm limited to knowing the instructors, but for the most part, there's a lot of people who work at our three stores. So I mostly know our instructors, but we have people who don't teach, who
Yeah,
are
I mean, you could go out, instructors meaning people that literally instruct. I don't mean,
yeah, like you, like who does webinars and classes and stuff. But we have tons of people who don't do
I know
classes.
there's Andy. There is a list on our webpage of
Yeah.
pictures of all of us, of all the
Here's
instructors.
here's what I would recommend. Call your store if you don't usually shop at Fair Oaks. We have knowledgeable people at every store, but I don't want to start naming names because I
Yeah,
only know the people who teach classes. And I know some other people too, but not nearly as well. And so I could name the wrong department, but we have people just as knowledgeable as Louis at all of our stores. Louis, everybody loves for teaching because his enthusiasm is so infectious and fantastic. And but not everybody teaches, and they're fantastic, just as knowledgeable, but
I
they don't.
mean, there's some brilliant people that are shy.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
mean,
I would
but
say
then
call
to pick
Merrifield and
their
just
brains, and
yeah,
I was
tell them you're
amazed at
looking for
how much they
someone.
know. And then
Yeah.
they're like, well, hey, why don't you do a seminar? I was like, I can't do a seminar. There's no way I can get up in front
Yeah,
of.
I know. I always laugh at that. You were shy. You didn't want to do them at first. Yeah, it's kind of, but anyways, so call the Merrifield location if you want to speak to someone there and say you want to talk trees and shrubs. There's tons of knowledgeable people there.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I'm not missing any names. But okay, let's see. Next question. Are there any significant diseases for any of the plants you mentioned? Um, well, I think you discussed the elms issue. Maybe we ask this because that's a long one. Is there a plant that's like super, like maybe lists an understory flowering and an overstory tree? What are your most like easy, most disease resistant, least problems trees that you would recommend for
Okay.
someone who just wants a really hardy?
Okay. So, okay. So one of them would definitely be the red maples. Red maples are easy, easy, easy. Sugar maples, easy, easy, easy. Of the oaks, easy, easy, easy. Oaks are very easy to grow. Um, the the serviceberry, easy, easy, easy to grow. The um, the magnolias, the sweet bay magnolias, easy, easy, easy to grow. The fringe tree, relatively easy to grow. The hornbeam, the American hornbeam, easy, easy to grow. The sycamore, extremely easy, easy, easy to grow. The I want to say the American beech is easy to grow. but I can't. It's a little finicky at the beginning. Once it gets established, it's easy. And once any of these plants get established, it's easy. Um,
Okay.
I'm looking around, the river birch, easy to grow. A lot of the moisture loving ones are easy to grow. You just have to supplement the water on them. Um, the Virginia cedars are very easy to grow. The
Okay.
white pines are easy to grow. The American hollies are extremely easy to grow. So yeah, when you get into most of the native trees, there's a few. The dogwood, honestly, to get it established does take a while. Once it's established, it's easy to grow, but getting it there can be a challenge. The red buds, again, pretty easy to grow once they get established. You have to really watch them. That's why I can't stress enough with both of those. Planting them now versus the springtime. If I
Yeah.
was going to plant a dogwood, or if I was going to plant a redbud, I would do it now. If I was going to plant a American beech, I would do it now. It's easy to plant something now, and by next summer, getting it through the summer is so much more easier than trying to get it through the summer if you plant it in the springtime.
Awesome. Okay. We have two questions left, so I think we'll get to both of these and then we'll wrap up.
Okay,
Um, so I think you addressed this, but you find benefit in holding on to the dried leaves over winter, correct?
say that again.
You keep the leaves in your garden over winter.
Yeah, so it really depends on the garden. Like as I said, you do not want to leaves leave leaves on your grass. Literally, they would not be well on the grass. The grass needs to, so you can take and do a lawn mowing and cutting them way up and getting them into the soil. When it comes to the beds, definitely you can leave them. If you take them out, you can chop them up and then put them back. But if you leave them in there, don't literally later on decide to take them out, because there's a lot of different type of bees that hibernate in these leaves. So you have a small point of effort to go ahead and grind them up. You don't want to wait too long, because if there's bees are hibernating in them, you're destroying the bees. So, if you decide that you're going to, break them up and then put them into your beds, do it right away rather than later.
Perfect. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, last question. You mentioned browning and yellowing of needles. So this isn't, I don't think this is a native, but it's important. We get a lot of questions on this every year. Browning and yellowing of needles on pine evergreen trees, does that also apply to the emerald green? I think it's the emerald green arborvitae.
Okay, so the emerald green arborvitae is what?
The needles browning.
Yeah, so any evergreen is going to literally shed from the inside.
Mhm.
Emerald greens are one of those. If you look inside of any like dense evergreen, you'll see that inside there's nothing in there but branches, like
Yeah.
right next to the trunk. And remember, those branches used to have stuff on them. It is a very common type of scenario that happens with shedding. And the emerald greens shed just as much as everybody else. The thing is with any of them, that literally the out part of that tree is going to stay nice and green. It's the inner part. A lot of people don't know that the emerald greens are literally shedding, because they're literally, you can't see in there because it's so dense. So, but yeah, all the evergreens do shed.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, that's the last question. Thank you, everybody, so much. I have some emails to send questions out. We'll send our coupon and questions. Sorry, not questions. Our coupon and our recording and our list of plants tomorrow by email. And I think that wraps everything up. Louis, do you have anything you want to conclude with before we finish?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody. I am here all the time to talk about native plants. I'm a big fan of the native plants. So if you ever have any questions or anything at all, I'm always here for you. And thank you for spending the afternoon with me today. I hope you got something out of my seminar. And I hope you
Thanks,
appreciate it
Louie.
as much as I do.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you at our next class. Bye.
Okay, I'll see you all. Goodbye.